Hello and welcome to Write On, the podcast from Final Draft. This is the show where we talk about all things screenwriting. I'm your host, Phil Galasso. Today we have an interview with Ferdinando Chito Filomarino and Kevin A. Rice, the duo behind the new film Beckett, starring John David Washington in the titular role. Following a tragic car accident in Greece, Beckett, an American tourist, finds himself at the center of a dangerous political conspiracy and on the run for his life.
No one knows where we are. It's really just the two of us.
There was an accident with the car. Where's my girlfriend, April? There were people in the house.
Nobody has lived there for years.
I saw someone.
Starts to cleanse my soul and I feel it everywhere. Not a soul will take my place.
My friend, come out. It's a misunderstanding.
Not a soul will take my place.
I need help. I'm a U.S. citizen. I was vacationing with my girlfriend.
Not a soul will take my place.
I need a ride to Athens. That's where the U.S. Embassy is.
Are we in danger?
I know you're scared. I get it. But you don't have the whole picture.
Then who's after me? This man's trying to kill me!
Not a soul will take my place.
Turn yourself into the police.
If I do that, I'll be dead in 30 minutes.
It's over, Beckett.
What did you want with me?
Guest host Sharday Sellers chatted with the filmmakers about how they collaborated remotely on the project, how they channeled their own personal anxieties into the film, and more. Check it out.
Well, thank you for doing this with me. We're in 3 different parts of the world. So just like Beckett, we're kind of spread across the globe, or will be soon. I want to start with how you first met each other, your relationship. So Ferdy, maybe you can tell me, when did you onboard Kevin or vice versa? How did that relationship start?
It started through an agency that was representing both my producer, Luca Guadagnino, and Kevin at the time. I was looking to collaborate with an American writer because I had this idea and this very premature story that I wanted to develop into this kind of thriller, but with a very strong dramatic character at its center. And as a European filmmaker, I like the idea of collaborating with an American writer. So through this agency, they took what I wrote, and then I read material from some writers. And the thing that struck me the most was something that Kevin wrote, which was also a different genre piece. And then, he liked whatever it was that I wrote at the time. And then we met and, started collaborating instantly. It was great.
And then Kevin, once you met and you've read whatever the pieces that he provided for you, as a writer, how do you pitch yourself? How do you walk in there and say, hey, I'm the right one for the job?
It's a good question. It was very much, what was great about the process was like Ferdy and I think clicked fairly early, and we just met over lunch. It was very sort of informal. And then I think in terms of my perspective, it was just being honest about my influences and what I liked and what I was interested in and what I wanted to write. And, I was given, I think at the time, Ferdy had like a page sort of description of what he was shooting for with this movie. And I was given that. And I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to work on something like this. And it was like, when something like this already has sort of a vision behind it. And the director, obviously, it's like it's sort of a different thing than like you as a writer trying to spec something and bring it into a studio or something like that. So I was excited about that prospect of having sort of a creative vision and a creative hand already sort of involved and behind it. But from my perspective, it was just sort of, these are my references in terms of these are the movies I like and I would reference in regard to this. And then, honestly, I think beyond that, it's just personality. Like if you kind of get along with each other and like, I think we got a sense of over our first lunch that we did and, kind of grew out of that. But mainly just sort of trying to be nice, make the right references, basically.
What is the timeline for drafting and outlining? Was it pre-pandemic, Ferdy? Was this all before the world shut down?
The whole thing was pre-pandemic, save for a smaller piece of post-production. But we started writing this in 2015.
Yeah, I think we met in 14. I think like toward the end of 14.
We met. I remember I was premiering my first movie in the summer of 2015, and you were in Italy. After that. You were in Italy to work together right after that.
Yeah.
So that's when we started writing, and then we shot the movie in 2019, in February 2019. February to April. And then we got most of the post-production done, and then the pandemic started and we had just a little bit left, not much.
So were you able to write in person together the entire period?
We did, it was a mix. We did the majority of stuff we did over sort of like this over call, usually it was Skype with just audio. And we would meet for a few hours every morning and just like, we outlined pretty extensively. And then during that process, I went over to Italy for about a month, which was great. My wife came with me. It was an amazing trip. And then there would be periods where Ferdy was in Los Angeles for one reason or another. So then we'd get together in person for a week or two and like spend all day sort of just outline.
The reason was to work with you.
Yeah. I don't know why. It's like Ferdy would come to town to shop, and then
I don't know, whatever guys like that do.
So during those like couple week periods, we would spend like all day together, and depending on what phase of the process we were in, whether it was we would tear apart script pages or outlining, it was great. It was like a fun, it was like kind of a writer's dream. Like you'd spend all day pacing around an apartment trying to figure out scenes and storylines and stuff like that. So
that's where I went to do whatever it is that I was doing in LA.
Yeah, whatever he was actually in LA for, whatever he was actually here for.
Clearly it was to go to the Getty Museum and on the way there, write a movie.
This is just you're just getting an insight into my my neuroses. Like, he obviously didn't come to work with me.
And then I want to jump to the end, Ferdy. Okay, so knowing that you're going to direct this piece, when do you both know this is the draft, this is it, we're good to go, we can now move into pre-production?
I would say towards the middle of the shoot. Look, jokes aside, I really believe that. Meaning, I never feel like, oh, nailed it. This is perfect. All right, all we need to do is shoot this and we're done. I maybe later. For now, I definitely don't feel that in general. I always feel like there's more to fine tune. Then, of course, once you cast the roles, there is molding to do depending on the type of character. Of course, it depends on the size and on the scope of a character, emotionally speaking, and even locations. There's always things in reality that will affect somehow, especially in a film like this, which is so much of it is based on topography even, that just being there and prepping the movie would change things inevitably. Even order of scenes at times,
I just wanted to say, like, I won't get into the specifics of it, but there's a small moment in the film that's very sort of illustrative of a character, one of the characters, but it's just completely based on the topography of the scene. And it's not something we could have imagined while we were sitting in the one of those rooms we were writing in. And when I saw a cut of the film, I hadn't been on set during the shoot. So I was like, oh, that's great. Like that completely illustrates like who he is as a person, but it's just solely based on the setup of this they were in a natural environment. So yeah, so I can imagine from Ferdy's perspective that things just coming to you and changing all the time.
That's actually a perfect segue for my next question. I want to jump now or into the movie, and right on cue, the first 15 minutes, we get our inciting incident, which I'm not going to say, but I do want to know, Kevin, first, what information was necessary to share with the audience within that first 15? What did you both decide? We need to mold this so they understand this.
I think quite simply just relationship and character, right? So we just, the main character, who he was very important to us, from the beginning, like from our perspective on him. So I think as much of that, like every scene, they were like, okay, we in the outline and script phase, every scene was, okay, practically they're in point A to point B to point C. That's going to set up things later. But really, it's like, all right, how does this line of dialogue, how does this moment illustrate who he is, who she is, and then their relationship to one another? Like that, those were the two things that were like the most important, especially in those first like 10 minutes. Like that's what we were. It was like, how do you illustrate as soon as possible the sort of like the type of relationship they have, the depth of it, and then who he is, especially because we're going to be with him for the majority of the movie, and like who who he is as a person, basically, it's like, and that was sort of where we went from the starting point for each scene, especially in those first 10 minutes.
And then Ferdy, for you, what's the balance between providing information to the character versus the audience? Did you always want the audience to be on the same level as Beckett, not knowing anything, basically, and just figuring it out as we go?
Well, it depends on the movie. In this case, definitely, because our perspective was relatability. Mm-hmm. It was, sure, we play in a thriller with these, definitely genre thriller elements and this plot that becomes more and more dangerous and somewhat complex, but we're never interested in the idea of having sort of an omniscient view, but always it being a subjective experience. And in this sense, it would completely ruin everything if we were ahead of the character. And at the same time, it would ruin everything if we were behind the character. So yes, in this specific case, because of what we wanted to do with Beckett himself, we had to always keep on par. And that is easier said than done, because it was also a matter, because it's kind of fun also to me in a movie of this type to kind of, wait, what is going on? Mm-hmm. And it's exciting to be in that space, but you can't overstay, if that's even a word. You have to calibrate how you move forward from there.
Now, I really enjoyed it because like you said, I was in the same engine as Beckett. Like, what is happening? Why is this happening to you? And you don't reveal that until much later. And I really enjoyed living in that space of just unknown, because it was scary. And that's a thriller, right? That it makes your heart go up. Like, what did you do? You're reasons. You're like, let's think back on this. Kevin, I want to know. So I always watch movies with subtitles on. This movie in particular, there's a ton of Greek in it. There's no translation. Was that an early choice to also remove Beckett from, not knowing anything?
Yeah, I think we had a conversation about that pretty early on. It was more because to Ferdy's earlier point, like, you're playing from that subjective point, his point of view, and we introduced early on he doesn't speak Greek, so it's then becomes just another way that you're sort of unsure or scared or ignorant to the moment, like what's happening. I don't, people having conversations around you don't understand, or you're not sure what information is being passed that you're not aware of. So yeah, we had, because we wrote I don't speak Greek, so we wrote them in English, but we had these sort of like longer scenes, and we're like, all right, I think we're just going to do this in Greek, and for non-Greek speakers it'll be, you just won't know. But it was fun for us to write, for us to know what those scenes were going to be, essentially. But yeah, it all played. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I have to send a shout out to Stefanos Koutsardakis, who actually wrote the Greek of those scenes, which eventually also, like we were saying earlier, changed a little bit. And actually, the Greek dialogue is real cool. Yeah. But it's more fun not to actually know what they're saying.
I think that's so interesting, because I've never interviewed anyone who's had to have a third writer come in just to do a translation pass. So Ferdy, how does that work? You interview people, then you hire them, and then you trust, because you don't speak Greek, that they're getting what you need to get across in the scene?
Look, Stefanos is actually the person who took me around Greece. He's a filmmaker. He's a writer, director, producer. And he brought me around Greece. My first time, it wasn't my first time in Greece, but my first trip there for the movie, to explore the mainland, which is where I wanted to shoot, and find the right areas to shoot in, and eventually locations to shoot in and everything. And he did much more than that, because we became friends in the process, but he really introduced me as a Greek to more insight into the culture, the people, the references, and of course the language. So by the time we got to, prep and what was English dialogue that needed to be in Greek became, all right, what are these people who very often were not even actors, but they were just real people? Like the bus driver is a bus driver, also because he needed to drive the bus, and you can't just hire an actor to drive a bus and stuff like that. He, I absolutely, at that point, we had a complicity, and I completely trusted him. He just told me what, I told him what the scene needed, and I'm like, go wild. And he went his own way, and then he would report back, this is what it all means, and it, sounds good. And yeah, of course, they are minor moments, but they're like small brushstrokes, which absolutely add to the atmosphere of the movie.
And to the stress, because I don't speak Greek either. And I was really hoping the subtitles would tell me what they were saying. And then I went, wow, this is how Beckett feels. No one understands him. He doesn't understand anyone. He doesn't know who to trust in language and in person. So I think it adds to the heightened state that we're both feeling. Kevin, for you, I know you get to spend a month in Italy to write. Did you get to go to set? And if so, what's that on-set relationship like, transitioning from now co-writers to just the director-writer relationship?
I didn't, unfortunately. Just the way the sort of production came together and the speed of it, it's just I wasn't able to go over. So I can't say specifically, but I will say, you know, we just through the process, like Ferdy and I become very good friends, and like so it's kind of this thing from throughout the movie. It's like it was sort of two people working together to like two friends have a movie they got completed. You know what I mean? Was sort of the process by the end of it, which has been nice. So we have a very symbiotic relationship by the end of it, where we kind of understood each other and what the other person needed, and you know what needed to be for the movie and stuff like that. So that's what I can say about that, about being on set.
And this is a question maybe both of you could answer, or maybe just Ferdy. I would like to know, in terms of Beckett's character arc on the page, does it differ than his visual character arc in the movie? Or if not, what was the intention between how he starts the film and how he ends the film? What did you want to convey?
Well, I wouldn't want to get into spoilers, but definitely we set the character up in a way that is basically the worst possible character type to be in a Manhunt thriller. In some ways, the type of person that he is, the type of demeanor that he has and attitude. And in some ways that comes into play in the way the first part of the movie unfolds and what happens in the first part of the movie. And then he engages it basically in a personal crisis aside from what's going on in terms of, let's say, action. And, you know, by the end of the movie, and this is where I don't want to spoil it, that, you know, he basically has to confront all of that. But I guess I respond to your question by asking one to Kevin, which is basically your question is how did you see it differently when you saw the first cut for the first time?
You know, what's funny is I don't remember seeing it that differently. Like I remember sort of like, you know, we went through, you know, it was I think we said earlier, it was like writing process 3 or 4 years basically. So then we went through iterations of the character and the situation and the plotting that did change over the course of the development of it and the writing of it. But by the time I remember seeing the movie and being like, yeah, that's what we talked about. Like that's the journey we talked about, and that's the character we talked about, and like that's the, you know what I mean? Obviously everything develops, and like Ferdy said, like the moment I mentioned earlier was like, oh, I was very surprised by and happy with it sort of moment based on the where it was shot. But no, for me it was like you know, Ferdy had a very clear vision from like when he started of the specifically the character, and that just got honed and you know put into the right story. So yeah, for me, I was pleasantly not surprised, I guess, if that makes sense. You know, when I saw the first cut that I saw of it.
I say to complete this, I would say that is accurate in terms of the arc, but in terms of the temperature of the character,
right?
It's all, you know, kudos to John David Washington, who, as much as you can conceive, write, you know, plan and everything, at the end of the day, he deals with both the dramatic aspects of this character and, you know, the genre sort of body part of the character. And he masters both of them and delivers something that is so warm and relatable, which of course we hoped for, but that's not something you can quite nail on the page, right? The way that then, you know, we experienced it when we witnessed it.
Right.
If either of you found yourselves in the situation that Beckett has found himself, could you do it?
No. I'd be gone. I wouldn't last 20 minutes into this movie. I was like, when I was traveling with my wife, we travel internationally. I'm like, we don't speak the language, y'all know, so it's, yeah, no, that's sort of the fun of writing. It was like, you get to explore your own anxieties and fears and put that into the character and you know, like play with those things which is what makes it scary and exciting.
Well, it's prep.
Yeah. That's why Ferdy made us come to a small town in Italy, because he was like, all right, let's see how he handles let's see if he can order food for a month.
And the biggest problem I remember in that town was you called me and asked me, are you wearing pants to dinner?
Yeah. I'm like, what are we wearing? It was hot. It was the middle of summer. It was very hot. I'm like, do I need to wear pants?
So you needed confirmation whether it's pants or shorts.
let's be honest, you never, speaking of feeling uncomfortable, you never want to be the one guy who shows up in shorts to something. So, it's, you know, it was very hot.
It's a solid question.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I only have one question left because this has been really great to go from the conception process all the way to the end without spoilers. So I want to start with Kevin. What advice would you give your younger writer self?
Ooh, good question. Ooh, I'm saying go to Ferdy first. Yeah, that is such. I'm sorry. I've never been asked that before, so I'm trying to think what I would say.
It doesn't have to be younger, like 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It could be like last week. I learned this. I'm a better writer than before.
Yeah, I think it's just, you know what I would say is to like figure out what you like, figure out what you're interested in, and figure out like what you think you're good at and focus on that. Like I would say that's actually sorry, it just took so long. I had early on, I tried to write stuff, I think, for other people, and I tried to write stuff that I thought other people would like. And that was sort of the death of me to a certain extent in terms of those projects. And then it was like, I was like, oh no, wait, like I was working on a project at one point, and I had written it. It was a feature. It was a spec thing. I'd written it and I finished it. And I was like, I don't think I would pay to see this, you know? And I was like, that was a big turning point in my career was like, I stopped and I was like, what do I want to see? Like, what do I think is interesting? What, like, you know, so if you're engaged, if you're interested, if you are passionate about it, other people will be too. And like that's, I think, the most important thing that I've learned.
Ferdy, same question.
I would say, don't worry about whether it's feasible or not. Again, thinking of the writing process, especially, you know, also being a director, I think a lot in images too. So when I'm inspired by a specific idea, how to turn that into a story, and inevitably my mind also fast forwards, you know, it's unstoppable to, okay, and this could become this or that image or that image. Shit, but can we even do that? Okay, no, don't scratch that question. It's not, that's too expensive. That's too far away. It's an area of the world that's not good to shoot in, whatever. No, absolutely. Think of the story, I would say, and don't worry about all of that, which of course will become problems later, but that's filmmaking anyway.
There's always going to be problems.
Yeah, it's not like they're not going to be problems, so it's fine.
Line producers everywhere just cringed. So
yeah.
that answer. Well, Kevin, Ferdy, thank you so much. The film is amazing. It kept me at the edge of my bed because it's streaming on Netflix on August 13th across the world, so everyone can watch it together and root for John David Washington and hopefully feel the same anxiety I did. We have collective anxiety across the globe thanks to you guys. It's
hey, wait till the end to find out what becomes of that anxiety.
It was literally still anxious up to the end. So my therapist is on hold right now. Thank you so much. I really look forward to seeing where the rest of your careers go. I mean, Ferdy, you already have such an extensive career. And Kevin, I'm looking forward to reading and watching more of your work. And thank you for taking the time out to do this. And I'll hopefully talk to you guys another time.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thank you.
Thanks to Ferdinando and Kevin for coming on the show, and as always to Sade Sellers for stepping in as host. Beckett is available on Netflix right now. And as always, thanks to you, our listeners. If you liked this episode, leave us a review, and if you haven't already, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. For news about future episodes and more, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Draft Inc. and Instagram at Final Draft Screenwriting. This episode was produced by Kayla Guess with help from associate producer Emma Vranich. Music by T. Kelly. Thanks again, everyone. Until next time, write on.